studying at the university. I've always been interested in the connection between science and religion. There used to be a connection. There isn't that very much anymore. And coming back to Bornholm made me interested in the medieval churches on this island. And I thought, since there are 4 round churches on this little, actually squared island, it might not be totally stupid to think that there could be an overall plan placing these 4 round churches. Since they are so geometrical in their shapes, they have square towers and everything, so there is a lot of also symbolic things connected to the architectural geometry in these churches.
Østerlars, Olsker, Nyke, and Nylas. 4 completely unique round churches amongst the 15 churches that serve the community of Bornholm.
So I thought there might be the possibility that there were an overall idea in placing them. And I looked at that, and at the first glance there isn't anything, not at all. Then I discovered that, well, when you have 4 churches, you don't have that very many lines to draw between them, so there are a limited number of lines that you can look into. And the interesting part of that was that 2 of these lines formed a very accurate 30-degree angle.
The 30-degree angle is part of the formation of a regular 6-sided star. Could this small hint be indicating the presence of hexagonal geometry? The controlling feature of sacred geometry is the circle. If a circle could be found, then maybe that could be the key to revealing any underlying pattern. The largest of the round churches is Østerlars. Using this as a centre, Haagensen tentatively marked out a circle on the map using the distance from Østerlars to Nylas as the radius. This immediately produced a fascinating result. Exactly on the same circumference is the church of Rutsker. Well, this could of course be a coincidence, but then there is a particular aspect of Erling Haagensen's investigations that significantly reduced that chance. It just so happens that the official Danish Institute for Map Production have used the spires of the 15 churches on Bornholm as trig points. This means that the exact coordinates of the churches had already been meticulously calculated. The relative positions of the churches had been pinpointed to the millimetre. Already, Haagensen was able to say that not only did a circle drawn on a map hit on these 2 points, but that the distance from Østerlars to Nylas was 14,335.585 metres, and the distance from Østerlars to Rutsker was 14,335.71 metres. That's a difference of no more than 12 centimetres, or just under 4 3/4 inches, over a distance of about 9 miles.
And then when I have established how that geometrical relation was, then I discovered that there was also another one connected to that geometry, and then there was another one, and then there was another one. And it's like grabbing a carpet and you draw in one corner and everything sort of follows.
Meanwhile, Henry+Lincoln was also discovering that there was more to the geometry of Rennes-le-Château than he'd thought. Seeing that his original Pentacle of Mountains and David Wood's Pentacle of Churches were not unconnected patterns, but were in fact exquisitely locked together, Lincoln began to look further. An amazing picture began to take shape. Extensions to and validations of the original Pentacle abounded. Castles, churches and other landmarks lined up in abundance to confirm the existence of a deliberately structured landscape hidden in the Ode Valley. Could it be coincidence?
Yes, that is absolutely true. The sort of people who approach it in this way seem to think that I don't realise that. Of course, you can develop geometric designs if you just join points. There is a distinct difference with the geometry which we have at Rennes-le-Château.
The distance from one point of the Pentacle of Mountains to the opposite intersection is 2 miles, 1,618 yards. The distance from Rennes-le-Château Church to Rennes-le-Château Church is 2 miles, 1,618 yards. From Rennes-le-Château Church to the Church of Compagnie-sur-Aude is the same, as is the distance from the churches of Antignac and Roquetaillard, Creux and Bourriège. It is the radius of David Wood's circle of churches. In fact, it's the distance between all these significant points in the area. But earlier, David Wood had found another measure which governed his pentacle of churches. The measure that the sunrise line divided 6 times into, that was half the distance from Arc to the intersection of the Paris Meridian line, that was the same distance from Roccanegra to the church at Rennes-les-Bains, that defined the position of the centre of his circle of churches, was a precise and known measure.
David Wood was the first to stumble on it, and I don't know that he saw any significance in it. He certainly doesn't seem to have talked about any significance in the fact that the unit of measure was the English mile.
Amazingly, the English statute mile is present everywhere within the geometry of Rennes-le-Château. All these distances between significant points are exact numbers of miles and half divisions of a mile.
I don't sit down and set out to look for something. I look to see what is there, and I keep an open mind. An open mind is a precious gift, and it's something that I do try to adhere to.
A Pentacle of Mountains, Sacred Landscape Geometry, and now fixed measures, the church circle and the mile. Extraordinary discoveries which Lincoln published in his book The Holy Place in 1991. Coincidence had built upon coincidence until another explanation besides chance must be sought. But what explanation is there? One inescapable suggestion is that some people in the distant past may have had a far deeper knowledge and a far higher level of surveying skill than we in our modern age are prepared to give them credit for. But why express that knowledge in this way? What could be the possible purpose of creating such an enormous work that is on the one hand magnificent in its achievement, and on the other, invisible to all but those who know where and how to look? The context of the discovery doesn't help in the search to find an answer. A story in a cheap paperback, a priest who becomes mysteriously rich, parchments of uncertain provenance, a secret society of dubious origin, a 17th century painting. Nothing in the trail that led to the discovery helps to explain or validate the discovery. There is, however, one presence always in the background of this story which cannot be ignored. An historically real and ancient organisation that at one time had money, power, influence, and, it said, sacred knowledge. "1,000 miles away on Bornholm, Erling Haagensen was detecting their presence too. Historically, round churches have always been associated with the Knights Templar. And in the 12th century, at the time they were built, Denmark's links with the order were surprisingly strong. The Danish Archbishop of Lund between 1137 and 1177 was Eskil.
He was a good friend of Bernhard of Clairvaux, who was the protector for the Templars. And the Grand Chapter of the Templars were in Clairvaux at the time where Eskil were down there for 7 years. He was actually down there in many occasions. And he spent 7 years down there at the time where we can see from historical records that they actually made plans for the Crusades in Baltic. And Templars, of course, and Crusades, they are closely connected. In particular, when we talk about supply for a fleet, which was this crusade had to do with conquering the Baltic countries there, the Estland, Letland and Lithuania. And Denmark was in charge of that, or became in charge of that, after this meeting in Clairvaux together with Eskil and the Pope Alexander III. So we can see there is a very, very close connection to that area, which actually is the heart of the Templars at the time. Yeah, well, when I first had the thought that there could be a Templar link between Bornholm and this knowledge, I thought about that if the Templar were involved and had done these churches and had then connected that with geometry, it was not unlikely that they could have done something like that somewhere else. And then I remembered the television program that Henry made and thought that there might be a good possibility that they have done it down there in the area of Rennes-le-Château. And I thought I would contact Henry+Lincoln and tell him that. So I contacted him, I called his agent, and eventually the agent had talked to Henry, and we talked then over the phone. And I said to him, I think if you look down there at the churches, you might find that they are connected in a geometrical pattern. And there was a pause, and then he said, did you read my book? And I said, yes, because at that time I had with great interest read the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and I thought that was what he meant. But then it turned out he didn't mean that one. He meant another one that he has just recently published, a book that was at that week going to be published in France, called The Holy Place.
It was the Knights Templar that seemed to tie together the geometry of Rennes-le-Château and the geometry of Bornholm. The two lines of research were drawn into one when Lincoln and Haagensen began to work together. Their collaboration produced a series for television in 1992, which was broadcast as The Secret of the Templars, and in 2000 their book, The Templars' Secret Island, was published. The authors explored the idea that the Knights Templar had been protecting a secret knowledge obtained in the Holy Land, and that for some reason in the 12th century they sought to